Why do I need tables and?
So you can compare a furlong to a mile or a kilometer?
I like this one, 'cause it's got
Tell me
big
furlong's in
letters.
there. If it's not, then that's a waste page.
Furlong, let me
It's
see.
in my daddy's always
Talent,
forever.
Mena,
My daddy's
Shekel,
always
Cam,
right.
Becca,
See?
Gara, Derek, Cubit,
Yep.
Span, Handbreath, Stadion,
it's got-
Kor, Lethic, Ephah, Say, Omer,
got this
Cab,
in the
Bath,
back.
Hen, and Log.
No furlong, huh?
Well, it has log, so I wonder if that's
Oh.
the furlong.
Yeah, that's a problem.
There you
And
go.
it's got maps.
But
Oh, it's got like.
they can keep the table of weights and measures if I could have,
This one does.
a reference.
It's got some neat stuff in it.
All right,
That we're, for Bible study, we're studying Sherry's Bible.
Bible? Yeah,
Yes, we
we're
are.
live.
Literally,
Literally.
as
All
Ben
right.
would say.
All right, literally, right?
We are on chapter 5, verse
Verse
25
25.
of Isaiah.
Right.
Yes, we are.
It's
If
like-
you're following along.
We have been,
I wasn't talking, he was.
Yeah, that's what happens when you have Bible study in a school environment.
What verse did we say, 2:5?
Yep.
25, yes.
Look at
They can't see
Isaiah
it, it's your
chapter
fault.
5, verse 25.
Anyway, we have been
pray
through,
in?
we did, already did.
Oh, we did,
Yes,
okay.
we
We
did.
did. And
And-
the last thing we were doing was the woes.
The woes, we did 6 woes. Woe is me, woe is them, woe is everything. Anyway, what we're gonna do is, after all the woes, Isaiah actually states exactly what's going on. Verse 25 says, "Therefore is the anger of the Lord kindled against his people, and he hath stretched forth his hand against them, and hath smitten them, and the hills did tremble, and their carcasses were torn in the midst of the street. For all this his anger is not turned away, but his hand is stretched out still." In other words, all the 6 woes before was just the beginning. And they were bad. They were talking about all the fighting men dying. They were talking about the old men and the elders being taken into captivity, the princes and lords killed, eliminated, the children taken away. Yeah, and he's still gonna smite
Wow.
them. He's not done yet, okay?
That's kind of a disgusting picture.
Yes, it is, if you really look at it. So, therefore, is the anger of the Lord kindled against his people. The Lord is enraged or is angry. Similar expressions often occur in Numbers and Kings and Deuteronomy and Psalms and Job and Psalms again. How many times have we've gone over in Bible study and in sermons with the anger of the Lord, the wrath of the Lord. That's
Right.
what we usually see, wrath,
Right.
right? So, if you'll pull up 2 Kings for me, and then you're doing what, first one?
I was gonna go do Numbers.
Numbers, right. We don't have to do them all, but it's just 2
Numbers
examples.
11:33.
Mhm.
Gracious.
23, 26.
11,
Nevertheless, the Lord did not turn away from the heat of his fierce anger, which burned against Judah because of all that Manasseh had done to arouse his anger.
Manasseh. Yeah,
Manasseh.
Manasseh. Yeah, that was the son of Joseph.
But while the meat was still between their teeth, and before it could be consumed, the anger of the Lord burned against the people, and he struck them with a severe plague.
They didn't even get to swallow. It was that quick.
Before they knew it.
Before they knew it, right? All right, so the cause of his anger was the crimes which are specified earlier in the chapter,
Right.
the woes.
The woes,
Okay.
uh-huh.
So when he stretched forth his hand, to stretch forth his hand has 3 uses in the Bible. It may be an action expressive of protection, invitation, or punishment. So it's the law, the hand of law, or judgment that he's stretching forth, right?
Yeah, and that's why they said stretch forth his hand against them.
Yeah, right. So we got
To let them know that there
Yeah.
wasn't an invitation.
invitation, right, right. It may be an action expressive, right? Here it is later compared, and Isaiah 14:27 says almost exactly the same thing. So we don't have to pull that one up, okay?
So he's gonna tell them again later on.
Oh boy,
Okay.
for the next 40-some chapters. Anyway, and he has smitten them, right? Smitten means punished, right? To what this refers particularly is not clear. We know the woes, but we don't know exactly yet what is going to occur. He's told them that their fields wouldn't produce, that they're going to be overtaken by armies or, by the enemy. He's not going to give protection from that. So there's a lot of things coming, right?
It's just a variation of smite, right?
Yeah.
When you smite something, you
Not when you smite it, you struck it.
strike it.
Well, he struck against the nation,
Okay.
and the people become involved, because if you take the protection away from a nation, what happens?
Well,
It gets
and
attacked.
hath smitten them, and
Yeah.
the hills did tremble. So it feels like he's struck the earth.
He struck the earth, right? He's
Mhm.
taken a blow to the earth, right? Now, others some supposes that the expression which follow are descriptive of pestilence. Others suppose that they refer to the earthquakes which occurred in the days of Uzziah
Mm-hmm.
and in the time of the prophets, and that's Amos 1:1 and Zechariah 14:5.
I got Amos.
Okay,
Oh, Zechariah.
you got Zechariah? Okay, thanks.
You said 1:1.
Yes, 1:1. Yeah.
The words of Amos, who was among the herdsmen of Tekoa, which he saw concerning Israel in the days of Uzziah, king of Judah, and in the days of Jeroboam, the son of Joash, king of Israel, 2 years before the earthquake.
Okay, so he did strike the earth, because we know he did. Okay, my reference to that is always remembered when Christ died on the cross. The ground split open, the earthquake occurred, it ripped
Tore the veil in
veil in
two.
two in the temple, and it collapsed the two stone structures that were supporting the overhead of the temple, right? So, yeah, I'm thinking, oop, that's him, kind of makes, it makes it like it's not the first time it's occurred, right? So,
Didn't it split right through the tabernacle where
Yes.
the veil, where the veil tore?
Right down the center.
Like a sword went right through it.
Yep.
Right.
right. And that's what I'm saying.
Could you imagine seeing that?
How would you like to been the priest in the Holy of Holies when that happened?
I don't ever want to see that.
Yeah, but it would have been a sight, right?
I would be in the wrong place if I see that, or I would be doing the wrong things if I see that. I
Or
don't
you
ever
could, or
wanna
you
see
would
that.
stand there and go,
But you,
"We tried to warn you."
yeah,
Call it, John.
but
That's true.
you may be the witness for it,
That's true.
because he does call witnesses for that, doesn't he?
Yeah, but he's gonna call Dave, not me.
Okay. All right, you got
I
Zechariah.
got Zechariah 14:5. It's like a half of a book.
Oh my gosh.
It says, "And ye shall flee to the valley of the mountains, for the valley of the mountains shall reach unto Azael. Ye shall flee, like as you fled up from before the earthquake in the days of Uzziah king of Judea. And the Lord my God shall come, and the saints with thee."
Wow.
In as many books of the Bible that we're talking about Uzziah, I think I need to know more about Uzziah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you guys are going to be in great shape.
Uzziah's coming.
Kings, right?
Yeah, he's in Kings.
Mhm.
But in the next chapter, I have a whole page and a half on him
Okay.
and his reign.
Imagine that.
Now imagine that coming up, huh?
Ask and ye shall
You'll
receive.
receive. Okay. Because he's referenced so many times, right? All right. And then the hills did tremble. This is an expression, also the word of Scripture to denote the presence of anger in God, is well adapted to describe an earthquake, which it is, right? Which occurs. I think that's the aftermath of his anger, right? Because who else can cause the earth to split? We saw it in Moses' time. He swallowed the people right up,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you'll find it in Psalms. I'm in Psalms 144. Hang on, I got Psalms 142.
Any other ones you want looked up?
Yeah, go ahead and do. You're in Jeremiah, or you?
I can be.
All right, go ahead and do it, and then
I'll do Habakkuk.
Habakkuk. Habakkuk. 144:5 is mine. Okay.
Eventually,
It says, "Bow thy heavens, O Lord, and come down. Touch the mountains, and they shall smoke." That's going to come into play in the next chapter too. Well, what happens when you have an earthquake or an eruption? You get smoke and ash, right?
Yeah.
The mountain splits open, right? So this one, and there was smoke again in Moses' time when he went on the mountain to get the tablets, right? Because it was to protect the people from God's presence,
Right.
right?
Okay.
Because it was so bright, or is it
His
just
you can't you will die if you're in the presence
right?
of right.
But
It's so luminous.
It's radioactive.
Yeah.
That's what I
Right.
see.
So I got Jeremiah.
Right.
I looked at the mountains, and they were quaking. All the hills were swaying.
That's a major shaker. Yeah. All right. And then you got Habakkuk
Habakkuk 3:10.
Okay.
The mountains saw you and writhed.
and rised.
No, WRITHED.
Writhed.
Writhed. Like a
Writhed,
snake,
yeah, yeah.
writhed. Torrents of water swept by, the deep roared and lifted its waves on high.
Wow.
Yeah.
So we had an earthquake,
A
a
tsunami.
tsunami, and the rivers just went backwards.
Yep, and that earthquake did this.
Yeah. Worked through the land.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. All right, let's just go to the next page here. And it says, "And their carcasses were torn." Now, the more correct translation of this passage means that their dead bodies were strewed, unburied like filth through the streets. So that means what? A battle. Means an army attacks. Right? So the carcasses is always past tense. Right? And if they were going into battle, usually the battles would the enemies, the armies, would allow at the end of the day to collect the dead back. It's saying they won't even have
Clean
time
the
to do
field
that.
off, yeah.
Yeah, they won't even have time to do that. It's going to be such an overwhelming thing that they won't even be able to collect their dead. Okay, the expression would more naturally denote maybe a pestilence even. They died in the street, right?
Yeah, and one of our verses talked about
Pestilence.
putting a plague on them.
Yes, with it would be while the meat was still between their evening meal, right?
Yeah.
It struck them, right? And we've seen examples in history of this. How about the bubonic plague in the 13th and 14th century, right? In the 15th, 16th, it keeps happening. We finally got the pestilence controlled in Europe, but it's not the first time it's happened, right? So pestilence can cause the same thing with the carcasses, because if it's pestilence, it makes more sense, because you would not pick up the bodies, because you'd be afraid of catching whatever caused them to die. Does that make sense? Because they didn't know how to protect themselves.
So the
Well,
torn,
we had stuff here too, like scarlet fever ran rampant.
Right.
so the torn part could be from splitting open. From
Yes.
bloating.
From bloating, yes. Yeah. It's a good thing we ate.
Thank you.
Yeah. Right.
Got the picture in your mind now?
I do. I had that picture in my mind when you read it, and it's like I got rid of it. And
Well, because I was thinking if it, like some big shock wave hit, then that would shred people too.
Yep. Yes, it will. Right, because but it may be descriptive of an earthquake or of any other calamity that would go along with that wrath. Right. He can distort time and space, and if you're in the way, you're just a human body.
Right. It'd be a shock wave.
Shockwave.
Energy.
His voice alone.
Mhm.
Right? All right, so for all this, note that after this calamity, his judgments are not to end. He will punish the nation more severely still. In what way he would do it, the prophet proceeds in the remainder of the chapter to specify. And that's in Isaiah 9:12 and 10:4. We're going to save that. And when we come to it, I'll remind us, okay? Because it's just this whole 66 chapters of Isaiah about doom and gloom, and you kind of wonder, how can he keep going and keep doing that, right? So it's kind of amazing if you think about it. His perseverance was amazing. He kept telling them and for years, and we're talking
because he cared.
yes, right. And there's some other things that will come up. Go ahead.
He would have been charged by God to tell him too. So, he's not gonna go, if he's
Yeah,
not gonna
well-
go back on God,
There are a few others
He's
out
gonna
there
keep-
that have been charged by God that were not as zealous about it. Like the one that got into Jonah's belly, or the whale's belly, excuse me. He
Yeah.
did not wanna go to Nehemiah.
Nineveh.
Nineveh, yeah.
He did not wanna go, but he did.
Okay, now, 26, it says, "And he will lift up an ensign to the nations from afar, and will hiss unto them from the end of the earth, and behold, they shall come with speed swiftly." Now, when he lifted up an ensign to the nations far, the idea here is that the nations of the earth are under his control. Wow. You think that's true today?
yeah.
Yeah. Nations are under his control. He can do whatever he wants with them, right? And that he can call whom he pleases to execute his purposes. I think he can, well, we know that he embodied his people to take over Canaan, right? How many battles did they occur, right? Quite a few, and they were victorious in all of them. And we know that from Deuteronomy and Numbers, right? So, yeah, he can call any nation he wants. The power over the nations he often claims, and that's in Isaiah 44, 28, 45, Isaiah, it's all Isaiah, anyway. And as we get through that, we'll see that calling different nations in, okay? Now, I put a note in here. An ensign is a standard or flag used in the army, right? The elevation of the standard was a signal for assembling for war. So God represents himself here as simply raising the standard, expecting that the nations would come at once. Now, I also know that other nations are looking at Jerusalem, and even today, right? If something occurs in Israel, it's world news. At the time, God was protecting them, right? Were the other nations watching them because they were prosperous? They had plenty. They had everything, right?
They wanted to know how they did it.
Right, and they wanted it. Other nations are envious of that, right? And they figured it was because of the people or their culture, or their whatever they were doing, they wanted a portion of that, or they wanted it, right? So if he raises the standard, I think his standard was the earthquakes. Because what's more devastating, or pestilence, for an army to take advantage of another country or nation when it's at its weakest point? Well, the standard may have been the earthquake that devastated the land, right? Changed the flow of rivers. Pretty severe, right? Well, that'd be a perfect time because the the trade routes have been disrupted. They're in fear.
There's chaos.
There's chaos. There's death occurring. It's a great time for an army to attack. The people won't even be able to defend themselves. They can't organize themselves well enough to form a resistance, is what I'm thinking.
Right.
Okay? All right. So, in Syria and Palestine, they who kept bees were able to draw them out of their hives and, this was the next part, I'm sorry. And will hiss unto them from the end of the earth, right? This means that he would collect them together to accomplish his purpose, right? The expression is probably taken from the manner in which bees were hived, a hissing sound, and that's why I put this in here. In Syria and Palestine, they who kept bees were able to draw them out of the hives and conduct them into fields and bring them back again with the sound of a flute or the noise of a hissing sound, a certain tone.
So they trained them.
Bees all respond to that, even today. A lot of your beekeepers will play a certain background noise while they're working with them, and they won't attack.
Well, that helps explain how the word got out so fast. Somebody must have been there close by
Observing.
and sounded a horn of some sort, like they did in.
Remember that when they were tracking Moses and the people out of Egypt, and they used the ravens and the eagles. What do they call them? Not eagles.
The egrets.
Egrets. No, it's the other bird of prey.
Hawks,
Falcons.
falcons.
The falcons.
Falcon.
The falcons of Egypt. They use them as carriers. Well, they were in the mountaintops, and they could watch the travel, and they would send back messages and tell the army where they were at. That's how they were able to catch up with them so quickly. Right? So, why wouldn't that still be a possibility in this time period? Yeah, of course it would, right? Gadent, a historian, this guy, they rejoice in the sound and the tinkling of brass and are thus called together. Alien, another historian, says that they were disposed to fly away from their keepers, but their keepers make a musical and harmonious sound. that they are thus brought back as by a siren, and restored to their hives. They respond to a certain sound and tone. That's pretty amazing, isn't it? So if God is talking to them, can he talk to the other nations? Yeah, of course. Same way. Right? So 27 starts out and it says, none shall be weary nor stumble among them. Ooh. This is about the other armies coming, okay? Nor shall slumber nor sleep, neither shall the girdle of their loins be loosed, nor the latchet of their shoes be broken. Now, I put a note in here. In this verse and the following, the prophet describes the condition of the army that would be summoned to the destruction of Judah, Judea. Okay? None shall be weary. Now, it would be composed of bold, vigorous, courageous men that would be unwearied by long and painful journeys. He's going to call the strongest, right? You don't want a weak army coming in and taking over,
No,
right?
they might not take over.
They may not, right? They would be fierce and violent and would come fully prepared for conquest. None would be weary, that is, fatigued with long marches or hard service. So these are experienced and seasoned on army is what he's calling, okay? And Deuteronomy 25:18. I think we need to read that. Oh, you got it? All right. So. Let's see. I don't even know what I'm doing.
You guys want some water?
Has anyone?
Is it hot in there?
It's warm in here. You can turn the AC on if you
You
want.
had Dr. Pepper, you open?
25:18.
Yeah.
How he met thee by the way, and smote the hindmost of thee, all that were feeble behind thee, when thou wast faint and weary, and he feared not God.
So they have no fear of God, a reference. So they're going to come in and what? Wipe out the feeble and the weak. Take over. Right? Bad time for them coming, right? Now none shall slumber. They shall be unwearied and indefatigable, pursuing their purpose with every watchful vigilance. So much as not to be off their guard, they cannot be taken by surprise. They are coming prepared, is what Isaiah's trying to tell them that this is going to be the worst thing, the worst enemy they've ever seen.
They've probably noticed a lot of things going on in this area. You know, we talked
Over the time period, right?
about the young kings,
Kings,
the children kings,
right?
that are drinking a lot.
And all the parties going on.
Parties, yeah, and they're probably just watching.
And it's the whole world
Yes.
coming, because it says the ends of the earth.
Yes.
So it's all these nations are going to band together and drop the hammer on Judea.
You know how many riches they have in Judah and Jerusalem at the time? A lot. Okay, it's amazing because the wealth was not a problem there for anyone. You know, it was amazing. Okay, so what is the next one? It says, "Neither shall the girdle of the loins be loosened." The warriors wore a loose, large flowing robe or upper garment. When they labored or ran, it was necessary to gird this up around the body or to lay it aside altogether. The form of expression here means that they will not relax their efforts, is what they're saying. Okay? They will not run from their conquest. In that girdle with which they bound up their robes, the Orientals usually carried their dirks and swords in it. So it was another place to carry more weapons. You know? Nehemiah 4:18 and Ezekiel 22:15. Means that they should be fully and at all times prepared for action. That Nehemiah, when I read that one, it says from within their robes they brought forth weapons. I'm like, whoa, okay. So this was well known. All right, so I'm thinking this is going to be an eastern country, right? East of Jerusalem, east of Judea, east and probably north and east. That whole area that leads into what is now China and Turkey and Iraq and all that. Not good neighbors. Okay.
Are we going to learn if this came to be?
Yes, it comes down. We get to see the results of it.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Nor the latch of their shoes be broken. That means that their shoes or sandals were attached to the feet by upper leather, and they were girded on by thongs and strings. Matthew 3:2. You got that one?
Yeah, and say and repent, for the kingdom of heaven has come near.
This is the what? This is the,
Matthew 3:2?
maybe I got the wrong one.
Matthew 3:2. Maybe it's Matthew 2:3.
Maybe it could be. I could be dyslexic. Yeah.
No.
What are we trying to find?
Just
Should be talking about shoes.
Okay.
Where, oh,
Latched of the shoes be
Soles
broken.
of the shoes. That doesn't sound like
2:3.
anything in Matthew.
No.
No.
Not that I'm a Matthew expert, but
No.
usually themes for the.
I got Ezekiel 22:15.
Okay, you want to see that one?
13.
I may have.
That doesn't go with that.
I will disperse you among the nations and scatter you through the countries, and I will put an end to your uncleanliness.
Wow. Okay, he's scattering
Yeah.
through the nations. That means more than one, right? Like you said, Dave. He's calling them from the ends of the earth, right? Okay. I know that anyway. There's something in Matthew about the straps.
Let me look. Chapter 1 is the begats. Chapter 2 is King Herod's all the males.
Mm-hmm.
Chapter 3 is the baptism. Chapter 4 is when he goes to be tempted by the devil. Chapter 5 is the Sermon on the Mount. Maybe Jesus talks about walking shoes.
Well, you're talking about nor the latchet of their shoes be broken, but this is girdle of their loins, because John's clothes were made of camel's hair, and he had a leather belt around his
yes.
waist. His
Mhm.
food was locusts and wild honey.
And his shoes would have been not the common walking sandals, but made of the leather and latched on. That would have been his attire, like in the forest. Right.
It's not important.
No,
I mean, this is important,
Yeah,
but
but
this-
that's not. Yeah, okay. I must have misread it anyway. I'm probably tired.
Maybe.
All right. Anyway,
It's COVID.
it's
Blame
good.
it on
Yeah,
COVID.
blame it on COVID. Okay. Verse 28.
Okay.
Right? It says, whose arrows are sharp and all their bows bent. Their horses' hooves shall be counted like flint, and their wheels like a whirlwind. Now, kind of a very descriptive verse here. Now, if you have arrows are sharp, that means the bows and arrows were the common instruments of fighting at a distance, right? Arrows were, of course, made sharp and usually pointed with iron for the purpose of penetrating the shields or coats of mail that protected the mail,
Mhm.
which were used to guard against them, right? So these guys would have come prepared to defeat the shielding, right? So these would have been bigger, I call longbows, instead of the short bows that you would normally see in a war.
Yeah, they need some heavy enough to penetrate mail, because that's almost what I wore at working at a slaughterhouse.
Mm-hmm.
It was little plates, and they were all held together by
Yes.
little rings.
Yep.
Right.
And they overlapped, and that
Mhm.
way nothing could, if you
Couldn't actually
messed up with a
yourself.
knife,
You didn't stab yourself, right?
unless you came up here.
Yeah. But you understand that type of thing.
Yes,
So
yes.
it's just to impress on their minds the fierceness and the devastation that was to come. Even their own protection, your shields aren't going to hold, right? And all their bows bent. I mean, everything was ready for battle, right? Now the horses' hooves would be kind of like flint. It was supposed that the ancients did not usually shoe their horses, right? Hence, a hard, solid hoof would add greatly to the value of a horse.
Mm.
The prophet here means that their horses would be prepared for any fatigue or any expedition or type of war geography. You can see a full description of the horses and chariots and boat carts, arrows, and that's a Jewish publication.
Publication?
Yes, I gave you the reference for that.
HIEROZ.
Yeah.
Go-karts.
Arrows. Yeah. Anyway, So this army had obviously prepared for all types of terrain. Hooves are great in sand and soft earth, but the iron would keep the horse's hooves from breaking and chipping in rock or going over a mountain or through a pass, right? So they were ready for travel. They were just raised and bred and taken care of. So these were war horses, and which would be very valuable to this group. So it tells you that they have a lot of money to back them too. Whoever their emperor or king is built his army up, and he's put great effort into the animals as well as the men. Okay, it's not going to be an easy one. You're not going to be able to resist them, is what it's going to come down to. And their wheels like a whirlwind. That is, the wheels of their chariots shall be swift as the wind, and they shall raise a cloud of dust like a whirlwind. This comparison was very common, and again in Bochart. A magnificent description of a war horse in Job 39, 19 through 25. Job.
What? 20 what?
39,
39, yeah.
39.
19 to 25.
Let's see.
Job 39.
19. Hast thou given the horse strength? Hast thou clothed his neck with thunder? That's it.
That's the only one.
All the way through 25?
Oh, through 25, my bad.
Right.
So 20 goes on to say, canst thou make him afraid of a grasshopper? The glory of his nostrils is terrible. He paweth in the valley, and rejoice in his strength. He goeth on to meet the armed men. He mocketh at fear, and is not affrighted. Neither turneth he back from the sword. The quiver rattleth against him, the glistening spear and the shield. He swalloweth the ground with fierceness and rage, neither believeth he that it is the sound of the trumpet. He saith among the trumpets, Ha ha, and he smiteth the battle afar off, the thunder of the captains and the shouting. And that's
Yeah.
it. That's
What he's saying is he's describing a great war horse. It's not afraid of the enemy's trumpets. It's not afraid of the sound. It's not afraid of the hills. It's just like, this is my job and this is what we're going to do. I ain't afraid of nothing.
It's a big old Clydesdale.
It's a big old horse coming down that hill after you. It's not afraid of your swords because it's got the protection. The lightning they talk about on his neck, that would be a protective banner or a shield. Because that's the quickest way to take a horse out is cut his throat, right? So they would gird those with leather and then paint them like lightning bolts.
I'm gonna have nightmares tonight. God.
Hey, those the medieval times, those horses, those guys, the knights and stuff fought with,
They were mean.
they were
They
the
were,
partner.
they were, yeah, they would protect them to the death.
They were
Fight.
trained to
Yes.
strike
Yep.
with their front hooves.
Yep,
Yeah.
take people out.
Bite.
Yeah.
They were trained for war.
They wouldn't even have a
I
vehicle.
wonder if that also
Right.
they're referencing the flint, because flint you use to make, so the sharpness of it.
The sharpness.
hooves.
Yes. The cutting power is again another reference, right? And also flint starts a fire, doesn't it?
Right.
That's what I was thinking more toward the fire, but I'm thinking, okay, when their hooves hit the rocks, it doesn't necessarily do a spark unless it's got shoes.
Right.
So that would tell you.
And these are shod. These horses
So
are
if
shod.
they're shod, then, yeah,
Mhm.
they're gonna hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And when they're shod, when any horse is shod, they're less careful with their feet.
Yes.
Oh, they
Well,
love
it's
that.
like that with shoes.
Yeah, it's like running barefoot out here, right?
Right.
It's like the difference between wearing sandals and wearing,
Yep,
I
exactly.
got boots on.
Yep, you can take it on, right?
Mhm.
Yep. So the horses are no different than the men that are working and training with them,
They're
right?
as prepared as the
They're
men.
prepared as they are, yeah. All right, so 29 says, their roaring shall be like a lion, they shall roar like young lions. Yea, they shall roar and lay hold of the prey, and they shall carry it away safe, and none shall deliver it. Now, the roaring shall be like a lion. When engaged in war, just seizing on their prey, the phrase denotes their fierceness and cruelty, and the horror that they should inject into the hearts of their enemies. It's a psychological warfare. The noise,
Right.
right?
And that's what armies do that.
Yes.
They come in.
They come in making all that
Loud,
noise, right,
yeah.
loud, right? Now, they shall roar like young lions, meaning that those that are hungry and almost famished and in the sight of their prey. And Job 4:10 talks about that. You know, the young lions came in and killed off his flocks. In a pride, the old lions and the lionesses, as young ones get up to time to leave, they'll run them off, and they have to form their own prides, right? Well, they are hungry. They are fierce. They're not afraid of anything. And
You
they'll...
want me to read it?
Oh, go ahead, yeah.
The roaring of the lion and the voice of the fierce lion and the teeth of the young lions are broken.
Okay.
Mm.
So eventually, yeah. It does talk about the teeth too, the biting.
Well, it talks about the difference between the
Yes,
lion and the young lions, and
and the older lions, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They can run the young lions off, but the young lions can go to another pride and challenge the
Yes.
leader.
Yes, they
And
can.
that's how they can get their own pride.
Right.
that their own their courage.
Yes, they're
It's called
encouraged.
courage.
Yes, right. What's this? Oh, the next one says, "Yea, they shall roar and they lay hold of their prey of the prey. They're going to seize it with great noise and greediness, without compassion or honor."
Just like what you were saying, because they got kicked out of their pride,
Yeah,
they're hungry.
they're hungry.
They don't care.
Mm-mm. It's not going to be an exchange process. Okay, I'll say that. Right?
I'm gonna take the food whether
Whether you care or not, right?
right.
And they shall carry it away safe. A lion would carry it into their own den, and thus it would take the spoils back to the country from whence they came. This would be the army, right? Without any worry or resistance. Who's gonna go against them?
Right. There's nobody there to go against them.
Because he called all the nations from the ends of the earth. They're just gonna go in and clean Israel and Judea out, right? None shall deliver it. No one is going to help them or come to their aid. This is in reference not to the Babylonian captivity, from whence there was a deliverance in a few years, but the Roman captivity, from thence there is no deliverance as yet to this day until the return of Christ. Did you guys know about that? Never became a world power again. When did it finally become a nation again?
In the 60s.
Yep.
And England decided to let them have their sovereignty.
Have their sovereignty.
They were under British United Kingdom control for a while.
For a while.
Was it World War I?
Yep. And then World War II, they weren't a sovereign country yet. They were just a, what do they call it?
We would call it a district.
A district. Yes. Much like Washington D.C.
Right.
Yeah. Right. Or Puerto Rico or
Yeah,
Guam
territory.
or a territory.
Territory,
That's what I'm
yeah.
trying to come at, right? Okay, so it's until the return of Christ. All right. Well, they've got their sovereignty, but they've still got to go through the trials and tribulations to become a full nation, and they fight every year for somebody. They're always in battle.
They had 4 years of peace. Now they're back to war again.
Yeah, back to war again, right?
But he's still trying to warn them. They
Yes.
still have a
Mhm.
chance.
Mhm.
It hasn't come to this yet.
Hasn't come to this yet, right? Hasn't happened yet. This is what's going to happen if you don't change, right? All right, and then 30 says, "In that day they shall roar against them like the roaring of the sea. And if one look into the land, behold darkness and sorrow, and the light is darkened in the heavens thereof." All right, now, they shall roar against them like the roaring of the sea. That is the Romans against the Jews. They came from the sea, didn't they? They came across the Mediterranean with ships and massive amounts of men and people, and they destroyed Jerusalem. There was not a stone unturned, if you remember. They conquered. They even all the gold that melted from the fires from the temple, the walls of the temple. The Roman soldiers pried apart with their spears and took the gold that had melted.
So Couldn't this be talking about when Rome? Because Rome is created from all the countries of everywhere that the land have conquered.
Yes. It's two
Kinda like
phases.
Arizona.
Yeah. It's exactly, it is talking about that. His
the
prophecy.
chariots and the horses
The-
and the
yes,
sharp things.
all this is a prophecy, not just about Babylon that's coming.
Right.
That's why he said it would not end
Mhm.
with the first anger. It would continue, right?
Mhm.
Until they're scattered around the earth to the far corners of the earth, nations, right? Aren't they still scattered today?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think a lot of them by choice though, but when
Received
the
this-
United Kingdom
Mhm.
gave them their sovereignty, a lot of people went back.
A lot of them, but not all of them, yeah.
Right.
Right. All right, so, and then, the roaring of the sea, which is dreadful, threatens the utter destruction when the storm comes upon it. The roaring of the sea and its waves is mentioned among the signs preceding Jerusalem's destruction by the Romans, Luke 21. You got Luke 21?
Yep.
Okay.
There will be signs in this. There will be signs in the sun, moon, and stars. On the earth, nations will be in anguish and perplexity at the roaring and tossing of the sea.
Wow. Right? Signs in the heavens and the earth. It's pretty amazing if you think about it. It's a devastating time. Even the heavens are in alignment. You gonna make it? Okay. So if we look in, the next one says, and if one look unto the land, this would be the land of Judea, when wasted by the war with the Romans, or the Babylonians and the Romans, or while those wars continued between them and Jews, if you were to look, if you had to look into it, it was also expressed as, if you're looking from the outside in, it's just constant war,
Mhm.
battle, never ending. Still is, right, okay. And then behold darkness, this is a great affliction and tribulation being signified by darkness and dimness. And when we get to Isaiah 8:21, I'll read it to you, but basically if you think about it, it's despair, and it's devastation, it's everything that you believe is been taken away. And that's just like a dark cloud hanging over you, right? And sorrow, it is a distress, great straits and calamities. They go through so much, and they brought it upon themselves. That's what is so sad about it. We did it to ourselves too, right?
Yeah, we did it to ourselves as well.
So the light is darkened in the heavens thereof. This includes all things in their civil and church state, the kingdom being removed from the one, and the priesthood from the other. The priesthood was taken away. That's how we got the book of Daniel. The Babylonian time period, right? Those young men were at the temple to be priests or studying when they were taken and by captive by Nebuchadnezzar, right? So the priesthood is taken away. There's nothing left in Jerusalem. Okay?
It would also include their principal men in both.
Yes. And all the men too would be taken and used as labor, right? Go ahead. Which one am I looking at?
We finished page 16.
Yeah, okay. And then,
Yeah, just a little bit of.
it also includes the principal men in both, signified by darkness, the sun, moons, and stars, right? Because the principal men are what? If you signify that, is the leaders, right? The sun, the moon, the stars, it's like your hierarchy, the king, the assistants, and down the governors. That would be symbolized by the heavens, okay?
So he talks about the total and complete and utter destruction of this place
Mm-hmm.
in grand detail.
Right.
What about the people that,
The remnant?
what about the people that did not turn their backs on God?
That's
Is
a
that
good
coming?
question.
Or,
You'll love chapter 6.
okay, now you remind me of Paul Harvey. Now for the rest of the story.
All right. I think it's in under this one. Are we getting? You guys like this? The way this is set up? Yeah? You guys get for 13 verses. You get 9 pages.
It's less than a page a verse.
How many you need?
Well, that's one.
No.
One's good.
One's good?
One
Okay.
good. Take him back.
All right. What now?
Less than one page per verse.
Yeah, I did pretty good. I tried to combine them. There's a lot of information in this very short chapter. It's the shortest chapter in the book of Isaiah, the whole book of Isaiah, right? Now, you guys wanted to know about Uzziah because he was talked about so much.
I did.
Well, go to the very last, page 8, the bottom of the page 8 and page 9, and we're gonna read about Uzziah's reign,
Okay.
okay? Okay, Uzziah took the throne at the age of 16 and reigned for about 52 years. His reign was the most prosperous, excepting that of Jehoshaphat since the time of Solomon.
So, other than Jehoshaphat, he was.
He was a good king for a while, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the early parts of his reign, under the influence of the prophet named Zechariah, he was faithful to God and did that which was right in the eyes of the Lord. And I gave you the references there, right? Historically, in Jerusalem, he made machines designed by skillful men for use on the towers and on the corner defenses to shoot arrows and hurl large stones, right?
I know what those look like.
According to 2 Chronicles 26, Uzziah conquered the Philistines and the Arabians and received tribute from the Amorites. He did pretty good, didn't he? Right? He refortified the country, reorganized and re-equipped the army, and personally engaged in agricultural pursuits. He was a vigorous and able ruler, and his name spread abroad, even to the entrance of Egypt. All the way back to where they started, huh? Right? Then his pride led to his downfall. He entered the temple of Yahweh to burn incense on this altar of incense. Azariah, the high priest, saw this as an attempt to usurp the prerogatives of the priest and confronted him with a band of 80 priests, saying, "It is not for you, Uzziah, to burn incense to the Lord, but for the priests, the sons of Aaron, who were consecrated to burn incense." In the meantime, a great earthquake shook the ground, and rent was made in the temple, and the bright rays of the sun shone through it. In other words, the building, the structure split open, right? And fell upon the king's face, insomuch that the leprosy seized upon him immediately.
Oh, wow. So you were talking about an immediate.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right? Uzziah was suddenly struck with his tazat,
Leprosy.
which is leprosy, in the Hebrew word, before he had offered the incense. And he was driven from the temple and compelled to reside in a separate house until his death. The government was turned over to his son Jotham, a corrigancy that lasted for the last 11 years of Uzziah's life. And he died that's the estimated period of 751 to 750 to 740, 739 was that period of 11 years, right? So he messed up, didn't he? He thought he was as good as anybody, that he could go into the Holy of Holies.
He thought he was that righteous.
Mm-hmm. Well, we see the same thing with Nebuchadnezzar too, right? That God wipes his mind clean, makes him eat grass from the fields for 7 years.
yeah.
Right? Right, so that's a little bit of a history on Uzziah, right? That's why Isaiah talks about him so much, and he's referenced so many times in Job and Ezekiel and Zechariah and Jeremiah because of his long-term reign, and that he had done so good, right?
And then also what happened to him when he didn't do good.
Right,
So
exactly.
that's why they keep bringing it up.
Right. Mm-hmm.
A good, honorable man that went against God.
Yep.
This is what happened to him, and you guys all know this.
This is not like nothing. It's nothing that you haven't learned or heard before, right? All right, so we got a little time, right?
About 10
We'll start.
minutes.
About 10 minutes, right? So
Yeah.
we'll start with verse 1. It says, "In the year that King Uzziah died, I also saw the Lord sitting upon a throne, high and lifted up, and his train filled the temple." Now this is kind of important.
Well, the train would be behind him, like.
His robe.
Okay.
His flowing robe.
Okay.
It'd be a
Like-
train.
Like a.
Like a bridal train on the
Yes,
end.
that's what I was trying to think of. Thank you.
It would be his full robe, his full glory is what it is, right? Anyway, we'll go on through here. So the death of Uzziah occurred about 740 BC, marks a major crisis in the leadership of God's people. The death of an absolute ruler makes his or her country vulnerable during a transition of power. Another factor that would come into play, wouldn't it? Did we have the earthquake? gave him leprosy for the last 11 years, right? Okay. So in the year that he died, right, I saw the Lord. Now this is Isaiah, has a vision most likely in the temple. In this, the Lord, in the original text here, the word is not Yahweh, but Adonai. Like you had on the screen on Sunday, the name, his name, what a wonderful name, right? And you seen the first one that come up? That's where he would be called. Here it is applied to Yahweh, where it is also applied in Psalms, Isaiah, and Job, where Yahweh calls himself Adonai. And which means what? You guys know?
No.
Isn't it comforter or?
Ruler.
Oh, okay, that was the ruler one.
The ruler. He's the Alpha,
Right.
Omega. You know, the supreme of everything, right? So sitting upon a throne, high and lifted up. God is thus often represented as a king sitting on a throne. Did I skip something? No, I didn't. So in 1 Kings and Ezekiel and Jeremiah, you want to do?
You want me to?
Yeah, I want to do 1 Kings.
Okay.
That's it?
You and Ezekiel. You can do Ezekiel. Can you do Ezekiel or
Yes,
Jeremiah?
I
Either one.
can.
You know where that one is.
First
I
Kings.
gotta look up, I can't ever remember.
Okay.
22,
That's my
19.
problem.
22, 19. Well, the more we do this,
The better you get
the
it.
better I'm getting at this.
Yeah, I wish.
You will.
You will.
Come on, eyeballs, just, I know it's small print, but.
22, 19. I think this is 22, 19.
Let's say.
Micah continued, "Therefore hear the word of the Lord. I saw the Lord sitting on his throne, with all the multitudes of heaven standing around him on his right and on his left."
Okay. So again, it's another picture of him on his throne, right? Supreme being with the multitudes.
I'm close.
You need
My
to go?
pages are real thin.
Okay. You're close?
Yeah, I'm
All right,
close.
you're close. All right.
43-7.
Mhm.
My numbers are in the middle of my,
Yeah, so's
so I
hers.
gotta find them. He said, "Son of man, this is the place of my throne and the place for the soles of my feet. This is where I will live among the Israelites forever. The people of Israel will never again defile my holy name, neither they nor their kings, by their prostitution and the funeral offerings for their kings at their death."
Hmm.
They're never gonna defile his name again. I don't wanna see what he does if they do it again.
They'll be completely wiped out, young. Right? All right. You looking at another one, or you're going ahead of me?
No, it's Jeremiah.
Okay. You gonna do Jeremiah?
It's right here, right?
Yeah, 17, yeah, 12.
Jeremiah's a big book. I
It's a
hope we
big-
don't have to do that one for a while. A glorious throne exalted from the beginning is the place of our sanctuary.
So the only place that's safe is at his throne, right?
Mm-hmm.
From the world. Okay. Right. Sitting upon a throne high and lifted up, God is thus often represented as the king sitting on a throne, right? He's lifted up as an indication of state and majesty above all heaven and earth.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The train filled the temple. It indicates here that Isaiah was in the temple because he was there. So obviously he was praying, or he was doing the worship in the evening, right? He's a prophet. The word train properly signifies the skirt of a garment or a robe. Exodus 28.
I got it.
Oh, God, okay.
Twenty-eight, 33.
Yeah, 33 and 34.
And upon the skirts of it thou shalt make pomegranates of blue,
On the ends.
and
Yes.
of purple, and of scarlet, round about the skirts thereof, and bells of gold between them round about, a golden ball and a pomegranate, a golden bell and a pomegranate, upon the skirts of the robe around about.
So he would have been what? He was wearing the priestly robe.
Right.
The high priest. The high priest. So this is what, it's not, it's been depicted in some pictures as being a flowing red robe that filled, no, it would have been the same one worn by the priest.
Mm.
He dictated to them what they were to wear because that was what was considered the proper uniform to greet him. Right?
Mhm.
Okay. And then,
So this is a vision he's having, right?
this is a vision, yes.
And so that would be very symbolic to Isaiah,
Oh, boy.
to see the Lord in that train,
In the Holy of Holies,
right, on the throne
on the throne,
as Adonai.
yes, as the
I don't know if I pronounced that
Adonai.
right.
Supreme ruler.
supreme ruler, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And then evidently this design is a representative of a large flowing robe that filled most of the holy part of the temple, right? History of finish of design reign, we did that one. But so 2 says, above it stood the seraphims. Each one had 6 wings. With twain he covered his face, and with twain he covered his feet, and with twain he did fly. Now, what is on the Ark of the Covenant?
Goose.
Nope, not seraphim.
Something with wings.
Cherubs.
Something
The
with
cherubims,
wings,
yeah.
The cherubims, 2 above and 2 below. 2 to hold him up, 2 to, as
Right.
respect and reverence. That would cover their feet, right? This one, he's seeing the ones even above them, the seraphims. These are the ones that guard the throne of God, right? So
So we talked about
the
the
seraphims.
ones that guard the throne
They're the ones.
years ago, one of the Bible studies that
Yes.
we did.
Revelation.
Mhm.
And
Well,
angels.
Was
also
it
I
in-
did the
No, you did
angels.
the
one.
No, I
Angels.
think it was the angels
The angel
one,
one, right?
and they talked about all the eyes and the.
They can
Right.
see all directions,
Yes,
yeah.
Yep.
And they're fiery, well, anyway, it'll be here in a second. So if it stood above the seraphim, it would be the throne that the Lord is sitting on in the previous verse, stood as ministers attending upon their Lord and waiting to receive and execute his commands. They're at his disposal, as they're the most powerful and most all-seeing, okay? Word seraphim, which like the cherubims, plural, signifies burning or flaming ones. From the verb sephra, to burn or flame. The expression here means spiritual beings. Clarete et aspect splendor cuse flamet. Anyway, it's Italian, or Greek. Actually, it's Greek, and it just means it's from their brightness and their splendor of their aspect, appearance as if they were fiery and flaming. Their brilliance. It's just overwhelming to the eyes, right? It's probably that both their name and their fiery burning appearance were intended to be signified here, okay? But I did put it in Greek for you guys so you can read it yourself.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks a lot. I can really relate now.
It helps.
You love us, you know you do.
Okay,
Forgot the punctuation.
I did. Leave it alone, okay?
Hey, you're the one that's specified you did it in Greek for us.
Well, it just gives us another example that it's also not Old Testament, but New Testament.
New
It ties it
Testament.
together.
Can you
doesn't
read
it?
it for us?
Oh, no, there's no way.
Is it because it's missing punctuation?
We'll have to take this to our,
Could be part of it.
we'll have to take this to the Euro place.
Okay, yeah, the Euro place, right? Well, at least you know it's gonna be warm there.
You take it to Dina's,
Quasi
because they're Italian and Greek.
It's
Took a second language.
It's busy, so,
Mhm.
yeah, busy, so. All right, the only reason I did that is because of my background in medicine. The Latin and the Greek are very similar, and we had to learn that because most of your pharmaceuticals are in that language, and
Mhm.
medicine is. All right, so I was just having fun, so you
Mhm.
guys can make fun of me, I don't care. Anyway,
No.
each one had 6 wings, right? The thought seems to be that the human form was clothed as if it were with 6 wings,
Mhm.
okay? One pair of wings covered the face in token of what? Adoring homage,
Right,
right?
right.
That's Ezekiel 1:11, right?
I already know where it's at.
You already did?
This time I remember.
Oh, see?
He's got it?
Yep. I just gotta find 11.
1:11.
Such were their faces. They each had 2 wings spreading out upward. Each wing was touching that of the creature on either side, and each had 2 other wings covering its body.
Okay. So they were close enough on that, around the throne, that their wings touched. Now, what it also tells you is how large these creatures are.
Right.
I was gonna say, how do you know how big they are?
They're pretty big, because if his entire train, if his train filled the.
The Holy of Holies.
Yeah, and he was on this, yeah.
These are not small creatures, or small, creatures of his creation, right? They are supreme angels, right? So the first wings was in adoring homage to him, paying homage to him, right? With twain he covered his face. This is designed doubtless to denote the reverence and awe, inspired by the immediate presence of God. It's a small token of humility, right? We can compare Amos 6:9 and Amos 6:10. I don't know if you got Amos.
I got it.
It's a little book.
She's just not reading tonight.
No, it's okay. It's all right.
Amos 6:9.
Yeah.
And it shall come to pass, if there remain 10 men in one house, that they shall die.
And 10.
And 10 says, and when a man's uncle shall take him up, even he that burned out of the house, and shall say unto him that is in the innermost parts of the house, is there ye any with thee? And he shall say, No. Then shall he say, Hold thy peace, for we may not make mention of the name of Jehovah.
So
That's the reverence and
the
awe.
reverence and awe. Don't speak about God. Right? No, don't talk. Right? So so they covered their face in the manner as a natural expression to reverence. And that's Isaiah notes it again. So we go with twain, he covered his feet, right? It's a similar description of the cherubim in Ezekiel 1:11, which we read a while ago. You read, right? It says that they covered their bodies. In Isaiah, the expression clearly notes not only the feet only, but the lower extremities. This was also an expression of reverence drawn from our conceptions of propriety. They wouldn't kneel or bow, but they would cover, right? Their face and their body, right? Because to look upon God as what? For us is to die, right?
Right.
And they would not, that would be disrespectful. Does that make sense? Okay. They were just waiting for him to speak, right? This was, okay. The seraphim stood covered as if concealing themselves as much as possible, in token of their nothingness and unworthiness in the presence of the Holy One. Some great examples for us, right? And with twain he did fly, which signifies their great forwardness and expedition in executing God's commands. They were ready to go. They only need 2 wings to fly, but they had 6, right? You can imagine the noise they would make, right? Daniel 9:21. You
Got
get
it.
that one? Oh, you got it? Okay. I was going to get it.
21.
That's what it says, yeah.
While I was speaking in prayer, the man Gabriel, whom I had seen in the vision at the beginning, being caused to fly swiftly, touched me about the time of the evening oblation.
Oblation, yeah. Prayer. Oblation, okay. So, it's in referencing to the ability to fly, right, to move about, right? All right, and then you want to wait and start this one?
Yeah.
Yep, okay. We'll start with 3.
Okay, so we will start with 3.
Go. You want that pen?
No,
Okay.
just don't bonk my head.
That's pretty cool. I can give you a preview if you want.
7-7.
7, yeah, should be 7-7, right? Because Sunday's the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, yeah.
Yeah, next Wednesday.
And then the one after that is a board.
Yep.
So we'll be here next Wednesday. All right. But I'll give you a little preview on this. In this chapter, it tells us why Isaiah's so enthusiastic about what he's doing. Why he can go on for 66 chapters. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Tell the
amazing.
story.
Yeah, the whole. I think that the chapter 6 should have been in the first, so it would explain everything else.
Yeah.
But God
Yeah,
didn't do it
because
that
we would
way,
have known then more about the Messiah, right?
right? But he
And why they
wanted,
kept referencing him.
right? Why is
But
he?
if I'd read my Bible ahead of time in Kings, I would have known about him.
We all have things to do.
Well, I've read it. Did I understand and knew I needed it, you know?
Right. Yeah, I've read a lot of it, right? But sometimes if you don't break it down and study it, it doesn't soak in for some reason, or it doesn't make sense.
I was just gonna say, it's more like it doesn't make sense.
Right?
You're very good at putting it together.
I read one of the craziest things. I'm sorry, we're still on time. I was reading some reviews of some commentaries by some other philosophy or biblical philosophy. What do you call them?
Theologian.
Yeah,
Theologians.
theologian.
Anyway, and it was pretty. He believes that this whole Isaiah book, right, was just a prophecy for the time of Christ, and not for the people of the time period. But it's less than 12 years that they go into captivity in Babylon.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, what? He missed the whole Babylon thing. He just skipped over it. I'm like, how did you get to be a theologian, a biblical theologian? You produced a paper so you get written up or included?
Yes.
Everybody's entitled to their theory.
Yes, yeah,
And discernment happens when you need it.
yeah. And I'm like, okay, I agree that some of it does deal with Rome and the
Right.
overthrow of Jerusalem and the temple and all that. But it also talks about Babylon because the remnants.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't skip that either, or just
Right.
ignore it, you know?
Mm-hmm. All right, I'll pray
All
out.
right.
Lord Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for this Bible study. Lord, we thank you for the insight and the discernment. We ask that you be with us this evening as we travel home. Lord, we'd like to lift up traveling mercies for Lisa's parents, Pam and Steve, as they travel to Maine in their RV. Give them whatever weather they need to have a fun trip. And we also want to lift up Jillian's situation, that she can get, doctors can find answers, and not just be okay, but find answers so that she can get healthy. And what was the other one? I think that was it.
Our roadblock prayers.
Oh yes, also our roadblock prayers. And Lord, you know what those are, and just we ask that you take care of those. In Jesus' name,